with another season of Tailgate Talk, a six-column sports podcast with my co-host Thomas Woelfel. So this is season 2, episode 1, starting off 2024 a little late. We're 2 months in almost at this point, but so Thomas, has been a bit since we've been together, but we're starting it back up. We're going to try to do this weekly for a while, at least until football season, and maybe we'll give people a little more at that point. But so how's everything been going since we last spoke, at least on podcast?
Everything's been going
we have
well
talked
for me
since then, but
yeah, we're friends more than just once a week.
Right.
No, but everything's been going well, and it's kind of funny, we haven't chatted, I think, since before the big bowl game, but no matter when you decide to take a month break from a football podcast, there's still football going on in college athletics. So
right. So
we might have stopped, but the news hasn't. So we have a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, we do for sure. Like I said, we are going to try to do this weekly. We're going to try to get some guests on, including this episode. We will have a guest. I will be speaking with my buddy Connor Stewart, who, if you followed the site for a while, Connor. He is a law school buddy of mine. He wrote some blogs for us back in the day talking about gambling. Him and some other friends did a bunch of picks for March Madness is how they started it, but then they started just doing picks for everything. And Connor and I are going to chat. We're going to talk Chiefs Super Bowl. That still a little fresh on everybody's mind. The big victory down there in where was the Super Bowl? The Super Bowl was in
Las Vegas.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl in Vegas.
Capital of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll do some gambling talk too. Talk to him about the futures on Mizzou next year, over under on wins, that sort of thing. Get his thoughts as well. It is not gambling advice. I do want to just say that. Do not take our advice. It's just purely entertainment, and it's fun for you guys to listen and hear how much money we lose on sports.
Well, when it comes to me, I typically advise people to bet the opposite, because that's generally what ends up happening.
Right. Exactly.
Fade my picks.
Yeah, fade what we say. But that's not advice. That is not advice either. Don't take advice either way. But yeah, so probably the biggest Mizzou news since we've talked, like you said, is that Cotton Bowl victory. So I think you said this off air, that was a boring game, but really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, you got to say, if someone loves smash mouth defensive football, then that was the Cotton Bowl for them. I mean, it was, some people say it was ugly, but there were two defenses there that were very high end defenses. There's a lot of NFL talent on the field. Obviously, they were playing with a backup quarterback, but I don't know how much it really would have mattered, because he didn't have any time to throw anyway.
Right.
And then, from a Mizzou perspective, to be honest with you, it almost felt like, at least to me, that we went out there and our guys were almost wide-eyed looking at a team that, was Ohio State, that comes with all of the allure that they have. And maybe there was a little bit of, I would say, at least too much respect at the very least. I don't want to say scared, but certainly there was a lot of respect, probably too much respect from our offense. And it seemed like in the middle of the third quarter, we realized that, hey, the stuff that we've been doing all year, running it down your throat and slinging the ball around a little bit, works. And once we got going, we put it away fairly quickly. After we started moving the ball, it felt like the game was over, because there was no way they were not going to score on us. That was for sure.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I honestly just thought about this when you were saying it, but like you said, I think they looked across the field and saw those silver helmets and, thought, holy crap, we're playing Ohio State, and got a little nervous. But then somebody, and I assume it was Coach Drink, finally got to him and said, "Let's just do what we do. You know, it's gotten us this far. Let's just do it." They did it. You know, they got back to their roots. Cody Schrader, started putting on a clinic like he always has, and they got it done. How much of that do you think is going to help Mizzou next year when they, have to go to Tuscaloosa? Have to face
Yeah, I
teams like
mean, I
that?
think,
You think Brady Cook's going to be able to say to the team, like, look, yeah, they're Alabama, but we're Mizzou.
yeah, I think it helps from a leadership perspective, obviously, with you keeping your quarterback and basically your whole wide receiving core. It sounds like based on what we've heard and
Mm-hmm.
who's coming back from last year. Uh, Obviously, you're bringing back 3/5 of your offensive line, but um, it almost seemed like at times we were calling plays like we were trying to trick them, and it was almost just causing two issues to our. We were causing issues of our own instead of
Right.
um, like you said, laying on our strengths. There were even times in the first half where we would run it back to back down the left side of the offensive line, and we'd pick up 6 or 8 yards, and it was just like, why don't we just keep doing that?
Why aren't we just doing that? Yeah.
And then we'd try flea flicker, we'd fake an end around, and it was just like we don't need to trick them. We're just as big and strong and
Just
fast as
line up
they
and
are.
play.
Let's just go play football. And
Right.
so, part of it might have even been a little bit of play calling. There might have been an assumption from the coaching staff that maybe we needed to do a little bit extra to keep them off balance. But I mean, look, that defense on Ohio State, they had NFL players left and right, and I think it just took time for our offense to realize that the dudes that we play in the SEC are just as good and in a lot of cases better than what's in the Big Ten. So,
Right.
like I said, it took us some time, but once we got it figured out, uh, we were very clearly the better team.
Right. Yeah, I think that one of my biggest takeaways is, um, we, like you said, we lined when we finally lined up and just went after them. That's when we, started seeing success. And I think I don't know if I've seen this other places or not, but just the size of our guys was so noticeable to me. I remember going to, the Big 12 championship game in 07 when we played Oklahoma. Oklahoma was bigger than us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they just were. Their offensive line was thicker. Their defensive line just made our offensive line look small. Not literally, but it just everybody at every position seemed to be bigger than what we had, and so we had to kind of trick them, and it didn't work. We lost that game. 2013 against Auburn, our defensive line looked small, and that's a defensive line that had 4 NFL guys, 4 NFL draft picks on it, with Michael Sam, Shane Ray, Marcus Golden, and Coney Ely, and not taking anything away from those guys. Marcus Golden especially has had a very successful NFL career. Mike Sam's the only one that didn't really stick in the NFL. The other guys, at least played for a while, so they obviously
Mm-hmm.
talented dudes. And Michael Sam was unanimous first team All American, SEC Defensive Player of the Year, so he wasn't a scrub either. And so, but you could still see that there was a size difference. They just seemed to dwarf us, and it didn't work. We lost that game, got ran all over. And then, but this year, especially, it's just been okay. We do have the beef now. Drink has decided that we're not gonna try to trick them. We're not gonna try to get the little fast kids and try to run around them. We're gonna get beef and we're gonna go right at them, and it's working, and I'm loving it. So really excited to see how he keeps developing that, and obviously with some recent additions to the team with Caden Green, that kind of
Yeah,
is
our offensive
still
line
the
our offensive line should actually be larger even this year than it was last year. Now,
right.
you know, we're replacing a left tackle that's going to end up in the NFL somewhere. So it's tough to know
Right.
exactly how that's going to pan out, but they're continuing with the size. And then even in that game, down in Texas there, defensively, I mean, we manhandled them the whole game. I mean, from start to finish. And again, I know
couldn't get anything going.
Their fans were pointing towards the fact that they ended up on their third string quarterback because we injured their second string quarterback. But our dudes lived in the backfield from start to finish. I mean,
right. And their first string quarterback wasn't mobile, so it's not like he would have been able to.
No, their first string quarterback was a pocket passer, just like their second string quarterback and their third string quarterback. I mean, I think their third string quarterback was probably more mobile than any of them, and that would have given them their best chance. Yeah. So, and then because I mean, look, we were in their backfield, like I said, the whole game. They are defensive backs. They have, and I know their top receiver was out too, but they've got NFL receivers all over the place. But we've got NFL corners, so it felt like, and we had our best corner out too. By the way, Inish Rakestraw was injured or at least injured enough to where they didn't want to risk his NFL career. And so we were able to match them man for man defensively, and it just felt like if we could figure out on offense how to score a touchdown or two, we would win the game because our defense was where it needed to be from the kickoff until the final whistle.
Yeah, I saw a few tweets right when we scored that first touchdown that, tongue in cheek saying this game might be out of hand already, at this point. And I didn't believe it at the time. Obviously it was, because we would have only needed one touchdown to win. But it was just a very impressive defensive performance, and hats off to those guys. We'll talk more about them in the coming weeks as we talk, NFL draft. We talk what we're losing, what we've added, that sort of thing. But one of the best defensive performances, individual game defensive performances I've seen from a Mizzou defense, maybe ever.
Yeah.
So
it was impressive.
Yeah. And, always good to end the season on a win, and,
an 11th win.
An 11th win. Yeah.
You didn't even guess that. The biggest Mizzou homer,
Well, I didn't include a bowl game. We didn't include bowl games in our prediction.
Hey, well, you guessed 9 regular season wins, and I don't know how you're going to have us win two postseason games.
I underestimated them. You're right. But yeah,
happily underestimated.
Happily, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so since then, had some losses. Blake Baker took the job at LSU. Guess it wasn't money wasn't enough when his wife played soccer at LSU. So, happy wife, happy life, I guess. So, I appreciate him for what he did for Mizzou. I'm not going to badmouth the guy. It's his career. It's his decision to make. So, I don't really wish him luck because he's in conference, but, I hope he has a successful career. I hope he, has a successful career and sucks anytime he plays Mizzou.
Yeah,
but
I will say this about it. He signed a contract with Mizzou and made a statement that he's excited to be here for the long haul, and then left 2 weeks later. And I'll say this. Well, 2 things. One, I don't mind coaches leaving when they get a job opportunity with a raise. I wouldn't turn down a job opportunity with a $200,000 or $500,000.
Become the highest paid,
the highest paid person at my
career.
Exactly right. I don't blame him, but quit getting up in front of the podium and saying you're excited to be here forever if you're going to turn around and even consider a job 2 weeks later.
You know that's on the horizon. It's a possibility. Don't commit that hard.
Right. And just say, hey, you're excited to be here and you can't wait to see what the future holds, and no one's going to hold it against you. Just don't get up there and say you're here to stay and you're excited and this and that. And
I'm not going leaving GIF and
I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm not exactly right. Don't do that. If it became on the table, you'd be willing to consider it, then just don't entertain that.
Right.
That is my thought.
Exactly. So, but yeah, to replace him, we've got Corey Batoon. So Alabama hired South Alabama's head coach to be their defensive coordinator, and we hired South Alabama's defensive coordinator be our defensive coordinator. So be interesting to see who was actually the brains behind the defense there, and who got the better coordinator. But he's a older coach. I think he might even be older than Drink. He's been around a long time.
By today's standards, yeah.
Yeah, by today's standards, he's an older coach. He's not old.
I think he's in his 40s. He might
right.
Be
but I think he's older than Drink, so he brings some experience that I don't know if the defense has really, not taking anything away from any of the defensive coaches, but brings it maybe a different perspective. And, I think he's well respected. I think, we'll see. I don't really know enough about him. I got to be honest. I haven't paid attention to South Alabama football or to any of the teams that he was on. So I don't know enough about him to say definitively that I think he's a good hire or not, but Drake likes him. And so,
yeah. I mean, look, they had a good defense down at South Alabama this past year. I think they really play well against Oklahoma State, I believe.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, and so it's possible that he comes in and improves the defense even. Sometimes it helps to get a new perspective on things, and they say he's very aggressive play caller, similar to what we just had, obviously, with all the blitzing we used to do, where we've done over the last couple of years. They say that Batoon is very
gets pressure.
Yep, he's very aggressive.
I don't think he actually. I think I read that wrong at one point. I don't think he actually blitzes much, but he doesn't blitz, but he still is they were like the 15th highest pressure rate. So he gets pressure out of his
4 guys,
out of his front 4 without needing to blitz. But pressure is a key part of his defense, obviously, because
if you can bring pressure without blitzing or without bringing more than 4 guys, or even if you bring 5 guys, then that gives you an advantage, obviously, in the secondary. So
exactly. So
we should have the talent to be competitive, and you won't really know what the defense is going to look like until you start to get into SEC play, even probably. But
so
I think he seems to be a good hire by everything I've read. You just won't know till the game's played.
Right. Yeah. So, Brian Early from Houston, I believe, is the new DN's coach. That was the second hire we had to make because Baker took, what was the name of the DN's coach before? Peoples.
Yeah, Peoples, who came from Indiana. I thought he had done.
Peoples with him to LSU.
Yeah, and honestly, I think he had done a really good job with their defensive ends.
He had
those guys improved. Now it is tough to tell. I will say it's tough to tell if they improved because he showed up, or if they improved because we brought in about 6 transfers. So it's kind of tough to tell there. But the guy from Houston, again, seems like a good hire. They're in the Big 12, so he took, an SEC job, and
and they've had good DNs at Houston recently. So,
and our offensive line coach came from Houston and did a great job with our offensive line this year. So if our new D-line coach can do what we saw on offense, bring that to the defense, then I think we'll be in good shape.
Exactly. So, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, I think spring practices start pretty soon. I doubt we'll get any real rumblings of the differences with the defense or anything. But if we hear or see of anything, we'll definitely talk about it. But definitely just one of those things to keep in mind and to watch for the next few months to see if we get any indication before first game. But I think they're both good hires. I think we'll be fine on that side, or I mean, on that side of things. Maybe not the defense. We'll talk about that later. But defensive coaching staff, I think, will be fine. So,
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But we weren't the only team that saw turnover in coaching.
right.
There are teams on our. We were talking about this earlier too. There were teams on the schedule that had head coaching turnover. Alabama, obviously, with the great Nick Saban. He saw Mizzou on his schedule and decided to get the
He
heck
said,
out of
"Nope,
get the
I'm
heck out of
done.
town." Said time
Done.
to
I'm
quit.
gonna go chill at my lake house around and face Eli
Quit while
drinking
on the
the
head.
boys.
Don't want to take that loss.
Right.
And and look, we play A&M. They've got a new coach. I think they'll probably be improved. Mississippi State's got a new coach. We were just talking to, I think, Boston College, who's not in the conference, but they're on our schedule. They've got a new head coach. So now,
Yep.
obviously, I just listed 4 guys on the whole. Is that more opportunity for us, you think, on our schedule, or is that does that bring some nervousness with those changes?
I mean, I think all of them are late enough in the year that we'll know like what they are, what they bring. It's not like they're gonna. It's not like we're running out their first game against Alabama and we don't even know what offense they're running yet, and they,
Right.
we don't have any film on any of them. We'll have film on their team. I think Nick Saban leaving. I think Nick Saban is one of the 2 greatest football coaches of all time, regardless of level. And so, how do you? I mean, it's
Right.
going to be
It can't be better.
Yeah, it can't be better. And it's going to be. I'm kind of fascinated to watch, not just when they play Mizzou, but just to watch that guy's career, Kalen DeBoer, because following a legend is never easy, and so he has big shoes to fill, and it's going to be fascinating to see what the Alabama faithful do to him if he stumbles out of the gate, because they're not used to losing football games.
Right.
What happens if they lose 4 football games next year?
Right.
Like, we're as Mizzou fans, losing 4 games in a year is nothing. We'd be ecstatic about 8-4 seasons.
Right.
Do that in Tuscaloosa, and it's, they
You're
might be
looking for a
burning
new
couches.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. So, going to be fascinating to see. I think I agree with you that I think Mike Elko is I mean, it's hard to say when Jimbo Fisher has won a national championship before, but I think Jameis Winston kind of dragged him across the finish line on that one personally. And so it'll be interesting to see how quickly he's able to get them going. I think he will get them going. I think, if their campus leadership is behind him in a good way, I think that's the biggest thing holding A&M back. It's just, it is a weird culture, but there's so much money down there at A&M that they gotta get it. They're gonna get it going at some point, you would think.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe not national championship level that they want, but struggling like they've been struggling is not going to continue.
No.
I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what he does. I don't know. They're still probably more talented on paper than us, so that's always going to be scary when it's a good coach that inherits talent. They might have a good first year. So we'll see. I don't think that's necessarily a win for Mizzou, meaning like, obviously I don't think it's necessarily a win, but like, I don't think it's a positive that they lost their
Right.
coach.
Right.
I think Mississippi State, I don't know. Jeff Levy, offensive coordinator for Oklahoma. I have a brother-in-law that goes to OU, and he told me that the general consensus down there is that they're kind of glad to see him go. I think Oklahoma struggled a little bit on offense this year. I don't know how long he's been there, but I don't think he had head coaching experience. Do you know? Do you know enough
Not that I'm
about?
aware of. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't think he has. So I mean, first head coaching experience, and it's in the SEC. I don't see that going well.
Right.
But who knows? But I think that's probably a positive for Mizzou. Um, I think that makes that game a little bit. I think it was already winnable, if not
Right.
a should win, and I think it's it helps. And then Boston College hired Bill O'Brien. I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach. I think he'll probably get Boston College going, but they were really bad this past year, and I don't see them coming out of the gate hot, and
Right. Yeah. I mean,
so
I'm kind of with you on especially those last two. I really think Levy and O'Brien. I think they're similar in that if they have their guys, that they probably would be more difficult to beat than the way the teams have been set up with the previous two coaching staffs. But I mean, Bill O'Brien
mhm.
just got hired like a week ago, and there's no. I mean, it's way too late to put together a roster at that point.
Right.
So surely we can.
It's gonna be an FCS roster.
So surely we can beat Boston College at home. Mississippi State again. I think Levy. I think eventually, if he can get his guys in there at Mississippi State, that he'll be competitive. But I mean, that was a team last year that had absolutely no offense. The offensive head coach obviously had passed away, and they had lost,
Mhm.
at least a lot of their talent um, on that offense. And so I'm sure he brought some guys in, but it's really tough to totally rebuild a roster. I mean, you saw Hugh Freeze try to do it in Auburn, and they had huge success by just winning 5 or 6 games this year. Um,
Right.
and so I think Mississippi State it'll be more difficult for us to win that game, but they should be far enough down the totem pole that it shouldn't matter too much. Um, I think A&M probably is going to be much more difficult to beat just because they already have the talent on the roster, and because, like you
Right.
said, the support they have with the amount of NIL money, they were able to keep most of their top talent whenever they switched coaches. Um,
Right.
so I think that'll be
I
difficult.
saw some metric that they returned the most production, or
Yeah,
the highest percentage of their production. Granted, it was production on a bad team,
right.
but they returned most of
And
their
I think
players, and all their players are 4 or 5 star guys. Like they're all
yes,
talented.
and they're
So
gonna have a much better coaching staff this year. So I think that game
right,
that might be the most difficult game on our schedule this year. Could be at Texas A&M. Um,
right.
and then, like you said, I think Alabama. You have to say that's a net positive for Mizzou because there's just. I mean,
You can't go up
it's not like
from 6.
yeah. I mean, you don't. It's not like they aren't pulling a Green Bay Packers going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. It just doesn't work like that. You're going from
Right.
Nick Saban, one of the best college coaches of all time, and there's just no way you're following that up with the next Nick Saban. So, I think we'll have a better chance to win that game now that Nick Saban's retired than before. So, I
Right.
don't know for sure that we'll win it necessarily, but we should have a
Right.
better shot
Still
at it, I
going to
would think,
Tuscaloosa, Alabama to win a football game,
with
which
a
is still
chance
going to
to
be tough.
win. Yep.
But we
Instead of
do have
totally write it off the list, it's hey, probably a game we're probably going to lose, but we at least got a chance.
yeah. You're not going to be able to sneak up on them though. That's the difference.
That's
That's
true.
what makes every game that harder this year, this next season is Mizzou's not sneaking up on anybody. You're gonna
Very
get
true.
a effort from everybody. So, but it'll be fun to see. I'm excited about it. We're definitely going to talk more about this as the weeks go by. We still have, what, it's February. We have 7 months until football, so we'll find a lot of time to break these down as we go on. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and switch over to my discussion with Connor Stewart. We're going to talk some Chiefs football. Connor Stewart here. Like I said before, Connor's the old law school classmate of mine. If you've been following the site for a while, you probably recognize him. He did write some stuff for us there during law school.
But yeah, Connor, thanks for being on. How's everything been going?
Good. I miss every time college basketball starts to roll around. I miss our biweekly picks page. I don't know why it took so long to do, but it was so much fun. And if people really remember, in our first year of law school, I picked every bowl game, and that was something else. Did very well on that. So had a good record on 6Com Sports. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but started a new page, Betting by the Numbers. It's been going for a little bit. I'm kind of trying to break down a little bit advanced betting strategies for someone who wants to learn a bit more. It looks like Kansas has already gone legal. Missouri is trying desperately. So it's a good time to get a little education, even if you're not someone who's going to commit a lot of time to it. If you have some spare time, you're going to bet, you might as well learn a little bit so you're not just throwing your money entirely down the drain. So, but we're here to talk about something a little more important than just a little YouTube page.
Right. Yeah. So we'll talk a little more gambling at the end maybe, but we brought Connor on because, Thomas and I, neither one of us are, we don't dislike the Chiefs, but neither one of us are huge Chiefs fans. So we didn't feel like we were the ones to, talk about it, but it is a Missouri related event, obviously. And so we thought we'd bring on our resident expert. Connor is from the Kansas City area and he's one of the biggest Chiefs fans I know, for sure. He might be the biggest. I'm trying to think. There's going to be somebody I offend with that, but
to give some context, I watched all of overtime from outside, no volume, just sweating out in 0-degree temperatures in Chicago, just watching through the window. Whatever works, as long as it works. But I got to say, this has been a Super Bowl that, last year felt good. This one might have been, other than the first one we won with Mahomes, this is definitely my favorite. It was just a game where it was the same old story of, you just thought they weren't going to lose the whole game, but, boy, they gave it away at sometimes. Mahomes really played a bad first half, but he did what he does and just kind of mowed him down when he needed to. Kelsey, even though he didn't hit 100 yards or put up a bunch of touchdowns, he was really unstoppable in the fourth quarter and overtime. And the best duo in playoff history now are looking for a three-peat and looking to set history again. But we're fired up. I think that they got a little chip on their shoulder. Not that it's hard to be the current reigning champion and have a chip on your shoulder, but you get put as an underdog in 3 straight playoff games. And I don't know why they did it. That's like putting a plus number next to Brady. It never worked. Why don't do it? And so I felt that way for weeks setting up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, from an outside perspective, like me, I'm not really outside perspective. I watch the Chiefs every week just because they're on my TV and it's football, but, so I do know something about them, but my biggest takeaway, at least from the first half of the game, was that the Niners were in it and winning mostly because they were shutting Kelsey down. Do you agree with that? I don't remember. Yeah. He only had one catch in the first half.
No, he had one catch for, I think it was under 10 yards or right around 10 yards. First drive, we start and we get McCaffrey looking like he's going to run for 200 yards, and then he pops the ball out, and I'm like, this could go sideways for the 49ers. If they are not built to come back from 21. Maybe they can against a bad team, not against what I think was the best defense all year. I was like, this is going to get sideways. 49ers holding to a couple punts. I think it just was cagey. The 49ers game plan was, we're going to go out there, we're going to throw everything we have at them. Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo had a talk on the sideline that came out in the NFL films where they score that touchdown with McCaffrey on the double pass. And Chris Jones and Steve Spagnuolo are unconcerned. They're saying they literally threw everything they had at us. They threw their best plays, and it's 10-0. And our offense has done nothing. And we've been able to go out on short drives, some 3-and-outs, and just keep getting stops other than the one touchdown. I think that the defense felt good. And I've learned this more and more from Mahomes. I don't think it's an intentional, we're going to give some points. We're going to just I think they start strategically slow a lot because his brain just learns to process the defense more and more. He can't keep winning in the fourth quarter like this and it be denied that his brain works differently than everyone else. And as the game goes on, it becomes easier for him. And so I think the Chiefs were content with going into halftime down 10 and saying, like, all right, now you got to beat us to 21. You got to beat us to 24. And so I think that, like, I didn't feel great going into half, but I definitely didn't think that, like, I thought the 49ers played a perfect half and it was 10-0. And it's like, all right, or I guess 10-3, but I was fine with it. So I don't know. It was definitely different feeling than maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where it was like, if they get up 21, this might get out of hand. It's just a rude confidence I think I have now, but until proven otherwise.
No, I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but I was kind of trolling my Chiefs fans friends the whole time, like acting really confident that the Chiefs were going to come back because, you know, they hate the reverse jinx kind of thing going. But at the same time, I was like, what are you worried about? You still have Patrick Mahomes and you're only down 10. Like, you're gonna be in this game and you're gonna have a chance to win at least. I'm not saying you're going.
Not only that, I thought. Oh, there we go. Sorry, had a little bit of a breakup there. But to me, it felt like that. I thought the 49ers were going to come out in the second half with the run game and really try to lay it down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were like great in the first half. I didn't come away from the first half being like the Chiefs can't stop it, but I definitely thought that first drive, Chiefs get the ball at the half, and I was like, we score a touchdown, we put them on their heels, we get them running. That didn't happen. And I kind of got worried because I was like, they're going to send McCaffrey out and he's going to go. And it was very clear that the run schemes that the 49ers used didn't change, because if I know one thing about Steve Spagnuolo, he's going to make halftime adjustments. Now, what's supposed to happen in the playoffs is once he makes an adjustment, then the Belichicks of the world make another adjustment, right? And it keeps going.
They have something else in their pocket.
And the 49ers just kept running out the same like zone run schemes. And I didn't understand. Like, it wasn't that they went away from it. It's just it didn't change. So then the Chiefs, different alignment, whatever they were doing, was obviously stopping the run at a much higher rate. You know, we're cool with 4 yards. Just beat us on third down and put it in Brock Purdy's hands. Right. And so I think that's when the third quarter, when the Chiefs get that ball, they kick the field goal, and it's 10-6. It was kind of like, okay, game on. Anybody's here. Like, who's scoring last? And with that defense, I think that's really the story of the game. That defense was unbelievable.
Led by, you know, former Mizzou Tiger Nick Bolton. That's fun to see.
Hey, and everyone, no one can forget that one Super Bowl ago against the Eagles, Nick Bolton was one flag away, or I guess it was a fumble called back from being the MVP. Because if he had 2 fumble returns against the Eagles, that's an MVP.
Right.
I mean, I think it was, they called it not a fumble, if I remember right. But, I mean, he had it and was headed to the end zone. He's just,
I remember that.
The way that the coaches talk about him, he is the anchor of that defense right now. And it's cool because what I think is interesting about it is you can hear from the interviews after the Super Bowl, Spagnuolo was very clear, like the defense coordinator is very clear, that he has 8 to 9 starters on that field who are like general level IQ in the defense. And like he said, he's never had a defense with more than 2 or 3. So when you have that, like, he doesn't have to do anything during it. He's just watching them communicate effectively during the game. And I don't see, like, as the game goes on, when it gets to later in the fourth quarter, it was just automatic. They knew it was coming. They knew how to protect it. And they just put Brock Purdy under immense pressure and said, okay, kid, beat us. And they gave him the chance. I mean, they blitzed him, gave him those pockets, and he wasn't ready for it.
Right. All right, so
I have to say, I don't think they're very bad.
Right. Where do you rank this on Patrick Mahomes' Super Bowls? Like, most impressive?
I think this is the most impressive because I think that when we won his first, he was still on his rookie contract, so we could afford a little bit more around him. Obviously, with Tyreek Hill, like, I don't think Mahomes picks that one up without Tyreek Hill, right? Like the first one, because it was Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman. And like Nicole wasn't who he even was in this game. And then, I mean, obviously the Tampa game's always going to be at the bottom. That was like the worst Mahomes game ever. And then last year, I thought he played great last year. I think this year's going to be the top for me right now. Obviously, like, I just think it's a season story, right? This is not just a story of the game. It's not just like winning in overtime, winning over the country, biggest television event of all time. It's more like they went on the road against Buffalo and Baltimore, which is like murder's row of the AFC other than Arrowhead. And they didn't hesitate. Like, there were times in those games where they could have easily folded in. They didn't hesitate. Well, they beat Miami in the third coldest game in NFL history, playoff game in NFL history. Like, it's just a story of like a team that definitely should not have won the Super Bowl that won the Super Bowl. Like, this was not the best team in the league. I think they're roster-wise, especially given their age, they're the third or fourth most talented roster in the NFL, maybe fifth. But like, that team just learned to play, and it seemed like Mahomes and Kelsey and Reed and those guys just were able to flick a switch and say, all right, we're going to win another one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, looking at stats and, I mean, thinking about the game too, he obviously threw for a lot of yards and was an effective passer, but I think his legs were a huge difference. And I think he, like you said earlier, he just learns the defenses and just knows that, okay, they're going to give me some yards. I need to just take them. And
I don't see, so like Philly's got that fourth down play. I don't see why the Chiefs don't run anything except a naked bootleg on every fourth down. Like,
right.
Why wouldn't? There's no way a linebacker. Mahomes isn't the fastest quarterback in the league. A linebacker in the NFL, if they're respecting him and at least playing a little bit back, is not going to be able to beat him to a 1 yard line. Like, I just don't. Every time he gets 5 or 6 yards on it, and it never takes the ball out of his hands. If he wants to throw it and they double cover him and he gets to toss an easy pass to somebody, but like his legs in the fourth quarter and the overtime in the Super Bowls, I mean, it's 3 Super Bowls now where he has made enormous plays with his legs. And like most people say, he doesn't run very fast. He just runs just a little bit faster than the guy behind him, just long enough to do it. Like, he just seems to just keep in front of him. But I mean, it was that and his willingness to just keep feeding Travis Kelce the ball on short plays. Like, this is a play that will be forgotten. But when Mahomes moves down at the end of overtime, and it's, I think, first down or second down, and he dumps that ball off to Kelce, and Kelce takes it like 6 more yards after contact, and it's like first and goal at the 4 yard line. Like, that was when you knew this game's over. Like, the defense was done. They took the will out of him. They couldn't stop him anymore. And then Charvarius Ward, who spent all week talking about how much better it was to play for the 49ers, gets beat on the same motion that the Chiefs scored back-to-back touchdowns on last year.
Right.
I mean, how, as a professional football team in the Super Bowl, do you fall for the same trap that they scored the exact – I mean, it's the same motion. It's the same exact motion. And it's not indefensible. Just don't bite on it. And, I mean, that just shows the preparation.
Where their head
was
at.
We'll touch on it quickly. The overtime rules. I'm not going to just sit here and criticize 49ers. First time they've been instituted at this, like, in this level. But it's just a lack of preparation on the finer details doesn't win championships. Like, you just don't hear a team win a Super Bowl and be like, boy, I wish we would have known the rules of overtime. Like, that, those teams don't win. And so I think that's going to be a story going forward. It's just, you have to play perfect and you have to make the right decisions against the Chiefs or you're not going to beat them in the playoffs. It's really that simple.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the definition of the Chiefs right now. And that's pay attention to the finer details. That's what Andy Reid does really, really well. And that's what Patrick Mahomes and, Nick Bolton do really, really well. And that's Chiefs football at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I see the momentum carrying on. And I mean, I don't think at this point for the next 10 years, you should be looking at a team and seeing a roster and saying, like, probably not the year. Like, until proven otherwise, it's just, I think it's a smart decision to assume that they're going to have a shot in every game. Interesting to see what they're going to do with the contracts on the defense end. You have some up this year and then a lot of rookie contracts up next year. So, I mean, Veach has got to do his thing. The Chiefs have to still be the Chiefs. But, I mean, as long as 15's back there and 87's back there and Andy Reid's on the sidelines, I think they're in every game. And I think they know their approach to it now. Like, they know how serious to take the regular season and how maybe not serious to take some of the losses. Because, boy, there were some times this season where people really jumped on him and thought this was over. And
thought everything was falling apart.
It just seemed like they knew the whole time. They were just like, we're good. We're good. Like, just keep the path. We know what this looks like. And hopefully next year they get to play at Arrowhead a little bit more in the playoffs and make it a little easier on us. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfect bow on a season. I think that, I really want to avoid becoming the, like, they're always going to win, because I do think there needs to be some, like, there's a lot that has to happen to win a Super Bowl, and to win it back to back is insane. To win 3 would be unbelievable. But hey, if you're going to get a motivated team and they have something to shoot for, and it's like legend, because I don't know if they'll ever catch Brady. So, like, the way you level the playing field a little bit is going back to back to back. I mean, that brings it closer. So, yeah, optimistic, but still, I mean, teams are just building themselves around beating the Chiefs. So it's a big task, but I feel, and hopefully we'll get some of these Mizzou wide receivers in the next couple years, so we have a little more draw to the program and reasons for
It's hilarious that they were the Super Bowl champions and they're the only pro team in the state, and they didn't have the best wide receiver in the state on their team.
Still, he'll be there in a couple of years, hopefully.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh man,
but
we have a couple of months before we get into that. But boy, I am. The Chiefs start a little bit after Mizzou, so I'm going to be on my Mizzou like high horse for a couple of months, and then get back to the Chiefs once we get a little closer to playoffs.
There you go. So yeah, great segue there. That the question I was going to ask you is the current line I've seen on Mizzou wins for next season is 9.5. What are you taking? Over, under?
So I always kind of let the summer rest, but I think right now my lean is to the over just because of the schedule. And I think the reason I say that is you have a veteran-ish, at least experienced, I think that's a better word, experienced lineup. And you have a coach who now knows how to navigate the SEC schedule a little bit. Because I think that's the key, right? Like, we're going to win our non-conference. We're going to go into the SEC with like probably a number, hopefully a low number next to our name. So it's like, how do you manage the away games in October that are leading into the bigger games down the road, right? Like, and looking at the schedule in college football, one thing, it's big in the NFL, but I think it's even bigger in college, is like rest difference. And we have a couple, I'm not looking at the schedule right now, but I know at least 2 of our big games, we have like an easy-ish game or a break between. And I think that is going to be the huge factor of like, I'll tell you what, and this is going to be a little spoiler for everybody, the SEC is going to look like the Pac-12 next year. Like, there's going to be slaughtering among the teams. I don't see anybody making it out undefeated. Like, I really don't. I think everyone's going to trip up once in this new format. And so at that point, like, what does Mizzou need to do to be in an SEC championship? What do they need to do to be in the playoff? I think they go with the goal of like, we go undefeated, but you get 2 losses, and like the motivation factor is definitely there, right? Like, 9.5 would be worrisome if there's a scenario where like they lose 2 and they're like, playoffs over, we're not going to do it. Let's get ready for next year or something. Like, with this new format, they are going to be extremely invested no matter what happens. If they lose they have Alabama this year, right?
They're at Alabama. Oklahoma's here. At A&M,
like,
I think are the 3.
So realistically, it says we can drop one and still be as highly motivated as possible. So obviously, I'm a big let the numbers kind of speak and let them tell us which way we think this is going to go. But I can tell you just initial lean. I think it's going to be one of those, like, a lot of teams at 9 or 10 wins, like 4 or 5 teams, 6 teams. And it's like, do we win the close games to take us over that line? I like to think so. I think we'll beat Oklahoma. And then at that point, just don't trip up on the small ones.
Right.
But luckily with Drink, at least it seemed last year, we didn't have early in the year we did. But once we found that rhythm, even against the teams that were lesser competition, it felt like we had a game plan that was actually prepared and like the players showed up enthusiastic. Because that'll be, if it goes under, it's not because they lose. I don't think they lose Alabama, A&M, and Oklahoma. Like they lose some dumb game in November. So it won't be a fun bet because you'll be sweating it all the way. Remember when the Chiefs went, or the Tigers win totals like 4.5, 5.5, and you're like, man, if we can just knock out non-conference, we got to pick up one SEC win. Like, you're sweating it, I think. But yeah, definitely leaning that way. And I think college football gets you even earlier with like the message boards and Twitter. Like you start getting a little more fired up and hearing reports out of them a little earlier than you do the NFL. So I think I'll be doing a little longer write up on that, on why we're leaning that way. But yeah, we'll say we're going to go with it now.
I think that's what me and Thomas would both say. Earlier in the show, we talked about how one of the things I haven't seen many people talk about, but Mizzou's going to be facing 5 new head coaches. And the ones that, we're kind of worried about are all towards the end of the season. So it's not like they're going to be able to surprise us with anything. We're going to have film on what Elko's doing at A&M. We're going to have film on what, Kalen DeBoer is doing at Alabama. We're going to have film on what whoever Oklahoma's new OC is. Those aren't beginning of the year trip ups.
And the good thing is not just they're new, but they won't have that navigation of the SEC schedule like Drink will, like the other coaches will, right? Like the worst part about playing Alabama was the worst part about playing Alabama was you knew Saban was going to have them game planned ready. Like you just knew you were never going to get an easy trip from them. Georgia, I feel like you sometimes even got an easier trip. Like, but I think these younger guys are going to be in for a big time. I didn't even think about that. A lot of new coaches. Yeah, I definitely am leaning that over then.
Yeah. So it's exciting, and we have, 7 months to talk about it, but we're definitely going to be talking about it more and more as we go along. But tell us more about your YouTube channel that you're doing and what you're doing there, and plug yourself.
Well, we'll just talk quickly. It's betting by the numbers. And what this is focused on is, and for those that are a little less experienced in the gambling community, what I really try to focus on is expected value betting. What that means is in Illinois, in Kansas, in basically any state with full legal sports books, you're going to have anywhere between 6 to 10 to 12 sports books to choose from. Even if you're in Missouri, there's places like Bovada, MyBookie, places online where you can still access and place bets. And when you have that, you find consensuses in numbers, right? You can find, hey, all of these other sports books, the Chiefs have moved to 2.5-point favorites, yet they're only 1.5-point favorites at this other sports book. What that's doing is saying, look, I don't think that any one sports book is right. I don't think that any one sports book is going to have a better number than the other. There's ones that are better. There's ones that have people setting lines a little more accurately. But when you see a consensus that is different than what you can find, you're just finding outliers. And all you're doing there is creating an edge. What they call is closing line value. There's nothing better than putting in a bet on Wednesday that Mizzou is going to win by at least 4.5 points. And then news comes out, injury news comes out, whatever it is. And all of a sudden that line starts to creep 5.5, 6.5. And all of a sudden you wake up Saturday morning and you're saying, man, Mizzou's got to win by a touchdown now. If I would have bet it earlier in the week, they would have had to win by 4 points, right? So it's all about finding value instead of sitting here and being like, hey, Mizzou is, they have a good favorable schedule. Absolutely, right? Looking at long-term futures, those storylines are much more impactful. But I think when we get to the week-by-week basis, when you're relying a lot more on kind of just seeing what the other numbers are doing, it's a profitable scheme. I've been using it for years. It's something that gets kind of drowned down in some there's a lot of people online who just like sell their picks saying they're using this system, or they're selling software that says like, we can just give you the picks. There's no like exact science to it. And if people say there are, they're crazy. But like, especially in your major sports, in your college sports, in your NFL, your NBA, the closing line, whatever that ends at, is going to be pretty dang close to the final result more often than not. More often than not. We had 1.5 in the Super Bowl. It was a 3-point game, right? Like, these lines are so close. So it's really I try to just take these a little more like advanced concepts that I've learned from, man, a decade of betting, and I'm just trying to find ways for someone who doesn't have 4 hours to spend like creating computer analytics models to let them do the work. Let the guys who have $10 million bankrolls put down $1 million bet that they spent 6 hours working on in some like advanced analytics AI lab. I don't care how they come up with it, but I can tell you those guys win money. And when they bet, the sports books move their lines. And if I see those lines move, it works a lot. So it's not an exact science. I don't get on there, and I'm not trying to sell picks. I think that those people are the worst people on the internet because there's just no exact rhyme or reason to it. All I'm trying to do is like tell you how I get to the results I do. And we're going to be starting a little new series that's just kind of focused on the sports world as a whole, especially in the betting world. But a lot of people on the internet love to talk about sports. Not a lot of people like to learn how they work. So we're going to go through like headlines pretty quickly and just say, this is what this means in this sport that you might not know a lot about. Formula One, soccer, rugby has a lot of tournaments going on right now. So we're going to try to cover a lot, but I know, Six Column Sports has got it covered on the Missouri side. So, we'll be having picks, we'll be posting stuff, but please don't listen too much. Please listen to Joe and the smart people. Like, I'm just doing my best.
We actually did a disclaimer earlier on that you should not listen to anything Thomas and I say if you're using it for betting purposes.
So just turn off your computer. Like, if you're watching this episode, turn it off.
Right, exactly.
You have come to the wrong people, but it's worked for me. So like, I can't guarantee you success, but it's worked for me.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Connor, for being on. I'll tweet out links to his stuff. He'll send them to me. And I mean, Connor's knowledgeable guy. Like he said, don't necessarily follow him blindly, but I'm sure you'll learn something from his YouTube if you if that's your cup of tea.
Yeah. It's a big world, and it's just getting bigger. So the gambling world is becoming more accepted. And I think Missouri, if it's not by next football season, I will be shocked. They've tried to pass it like 17 times, in the video lottery machines every time keep getting it held up. But I think they're going to have to stop ignoring the $1 billion to the education system if they do it, instead of everyone just traveling. You might not know this as much, but as a Kansas City resident,
getting on that,
you just have to drive across state line.
Right.
My father over one of the holiday weekends with football on, we made a quick trip on the highway, hopped into Kansas, placed the bets, and hopped back into Missouri. They're just losing out on money. So who would have thought? But lots of stuff over there. But we'll get excited for football season, and maybe we'll have me back on and talk about gambling once we get a little closer to the season. Yeah, and maybe some March Madness here in a few weeks. Ooh. They just opened a new sports book. They just opened up a new DraftKings sports book that's connected to Wrigley Field, and I think that's going to be one day of early March Madness might need to be spent there. They got the full Circa video board. It's going to be great. There you go. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on, Connor, and we appreciate it. And MIZ. ZOU.
Connor, that was a great discussion. Wonderful Chiefs win, even though, Thomas and I are admittedly not Chiefs fans. We didn't really care. But we figured everybody else would, so we figured we need to talk about it at least a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thomas, we haven't really talked about basketball. Is there a reason that we haven't done that?
The games are being played. We're running around.
There is a team in a Mizzou uniform playing basketball games,
and they're out there doing their best.
They are.
Look, I thought we'd have a tough year, but I didn't think it'd be this tough. So, I mean, I will say, we could say at least we don't have the rumors floating around that Arkansas does. It could be worse.
Right. Yeah, we won't repeat those rumors, but the team doesn't seem to like each other that much.
Well, they like each other a lot.
Well, our team doesn't like each other that much. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Mizzou's team doesn't like each other.
Team likes each other, but not that.
The way that Arkansas likes each other. Yeah.
Don't search Arkansas basketball rumors while at work on Google. It's not suitable for work. But yeah, so we talk about it off air. We're not going to subject anybody to talking about basketball. There's nothing that can really be said right now, except in my opinion, give Gates time. He's got this class coming in is going to be great. They'll figure it out. It'll be next year. It's kind of the opposite of Nick Saban. It can only go up from here. So it'll be better. But yeah. Any other final thoughts?
Nope. I think we touched it all, and we had a good first season, and obviously kicking off the second season of Six Column Sports here, Tailgate Talks. Looking forward to it, and excited to keep talking Mizzou sports with you.
Yep. So this kind of wraps up our first episode of the second season of Tailgate Talk, a Six Column Sports podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's been on the bottom of the screen there the whole time. Let us know who you think we should have on as guests. I have a few ideas. We'll talk to Connor again, I'm sure, about March Madness or whatever he wants to talk about. Might try to get some guys about recruiting. Might try to get some former players that I know, former football players. If anybody knows any former basketball players that would be willing to come on the podcast, would love to talk to them. So just let us know. Send us a message. We're receptive to that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. MIZ.
ZOU.